We are live. I was
Hi.
like, "Are you frozen?"
I was paused. I'm like, wait, are we live? Is it working? It's working.
It's
Hi.
working. It's working. I feel like Mercury has been retrograding so hard in my life right now, and it never really does.
Mm,
So, just gonna preface with that. Good
I
morning.
feel good morning. Nice to see you.
It's so nice to see you. I'm going to try and like intentionally shut the world out and really focus on our conversation because I feel like despite being a near and dear friend, these moments of like one-on-one connections are few and rare because of your
Mm,
schedule and our schedule. And so I'm taking this as a very personal opportunity, to be honest, to delve into you a
thank
little bit
you. I'm so happy to be here with you. I second that. I mean, when's the last time we actually got to sit down face to face and
face to
dive
face. Yeah. And like have a
into
conversation.
this? Mhm. I mean, there's other people hopefully here listening.
Yeah.
I'm so, even if they're not, this is just all
Well,
that means.
Erin just said she's here. So, morning, Erin. Okay. So, to kick us off, I didn't give you your intro question because I wanted you to come and prepare for that one. But it's one that you're familiar with and one that I always love to hear what comes up for you
Mm.
for. So, your flume of awe. For those who, I mean, I feel like if you've been watching these lives, or if it's your first time, I'll still repeat it. But Erin and I stole this check in from Adrienne Marie Brown and her sister, Autumn Brown. And it really is just about getting to know what has been lighting you up lately, what's bringing you excitement and joy and awe.
Such a big question. This week, the awe has been um, people being able to reorient plans that they thought, like people's spontaneous ability to jump into a change of plans, and
Mm,
how clear people's communication can be when something needs to change, and trusting. Yeah, I feel like really in awe by some people in my life who've just like dropped things and flown across the country, or like
mm,
this really fun thing I thought we were going to do, I have to do this. Um, and I think that's giving me a sense of awe in that I really respect that. I think we need to remember how we can react to things from a place of love and care. And it's just a nice reminder that shit doesn't go as planned all the time.
right.
And yeah, that's my awe this moment, this morning.
And on flexibility
Yeah,
and
and clear communication.
mm,
Yeah, I think the thing for me is like the clarity with which people are like sharing their decision or their change.
right.
Yeah.
I love that.
How about you? What's your awe?
What is my um my awe actually is the power that giving myself time and space has in um, providing perspective.
Mm,
I am a double fire sign. I said this on here before, and I'm very impulsive and could be very reactive. And this week, these past 48 hours, I was reminded just how temporary and fleeting some emotions are.
mm,
Should I give myself and provide myself the time and the space to let them move through me? Which is a very timely, and I promise you this is, I did not anticipate this as part of our conversation, but I think that's the thing that this week I've been like, right, I need to give myself time.
hmm. I love that. It's so
Mhm.
hard to do this time of year as well, I feel.
This time of
'Cause
year.
everyone's like, oh, come to this thing, do this thing, finish this project, wrap up your everything, it feels.
Yes.
The pressure is intense to be social, extra social, to be on top of all your things. So good for you for
Yes. Thank you so
carving out
much.
that time.
Okay, segueing into our conversation, which is absolutely relevant, not only to what I was saying, but to the times that we are facing and the um, collective grief we're facing, the yeah, everything that we are all, I think, sharing in terms of very raw feelings,
Mm,
and how embodiment can be a source for regeneration and empathy and bridging.
mm.
So, kicking off with my first question for you, it would be, how has embodiment, first of all, what do we mean when we say embodiment? 101.
Um, for me, when I say embodiment, I mean a sense of connection to the body, to the self, to the moment, to all the layers that is us, um, physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, um, having a sense of self, a sense of truth, a sense of anchor, um, and what that shows up as, and how we show up in that.
Mm,
For me, that's what embodiment means. It means sort of the opposite of disconnected. It's fully connected. Um,
mm.
yeah. What does it mean to you?
Thank you for returning the question. What does it mean to me? I think for me, the pronunciation, or the quite literal like enunciation, is the definition that I take, as in like in body. So really practicing being in the body,
Mm,
and becoming more familiar and more intimate with our internal experience as
mm.
we are with our external one. Does that make sense?
Yes, hell yes. And the thing that's coming up as you're saying that for me is that it's alive. It's alive right now. Like when we're in
Mhm,
our bodies, we're in the aliveness of the moment. We're not
mhm,
the projection, the idea, the concept. We're in the actual experience of life.
right. Love that.
Um,
What has, or how has rather, embodiment been a theme in your life, in your work? And why do you think it's central to our understanding of social justice and collective liberation?
Ooh, starting off strong. I mean, my whole life, I've been really fortunate to have been encouraged to be in touch with my body. I grew up as a gymnast, as an athlete, as a dancer, as a singer, and all
Mm,
of these practices of both performance and sort of training, like rigid training, but also on the flip side of that, expression and sensitivity, um, took up a lot of space in my day to day life. And I was very encouraged to trust and develop a sense of feeling and a sense of listening, both internally and so. In terms of my life, I think it's been a theme that's been there from as long as I can remember.
mhm,
Uh, I think over the last 15 years, I've spent a lot more time studying, yoga, somatics, physiology, biomechanics, and understanding sort of the scientific realm of what's happening in our bodies and our nervous systems. Um, and so, yeah, my work has spanned, from the expressive arts to, the sacred arts of practicing yoga and meditation, and now I work in the world in a more corporate sphere where I'm helping create human experiences that are connected and safe and authentic. And it all really comes back to this reality of what I was talking about earlier, is that life is happening now, and we're showing up to life in every moment, you know, in our bodies to create life together.
Mm.
And how we connect with that opportunity is huge. And I think a lot of us have been conditioned to sort of minimize the power that we have,
Mm.
and to not understand or even feel like we have as much capacity to create change or to be a part of the creative process that life is.
Mm.
Our bodies, for me, are the most direct pathway into sensing and feeling and experiencing the creative pulse that is, you know, the exchange of life and the sharing of it.
Right. And how has this understanding for you been helpful or applicable to how you navigate and advocate
Mm,
in the social justice space?
yeah, I forgot the second part of that question.
No,
Thanks.
it was a good breakup.
Mm, so for me, I think the way that this plays out is both, you know, as a white person, as a settler, first and foremost, learning how to listen and learning how to like shift the conditioned embodiment that I've been granted because of my privilege. Like, so many people are walking around with privilege that they're unaware of.
Mm.
And so once you can see and name and understand in your mind what that is, you can then start to shift that into your embodied experience. So you can, you know, learn to take up less space. You can actively quiet yourself down, but from a place of openness, not from a place of shame. There's a
Mm.
different sense of adaptation that can happen, that feels intentional and very purposeful. And for
Mm.
me, that's been a big part of my journey. So learning how to listen, learning how to be in space without dominating the space, um,
Mm.
learning how to make space for other people, learning how to also notice in my body when I'm fatigued, when I'm overwhelmed, when I'm dissociating, when I'm no longer in a zone of tolerance where I can have a useful conversation and you need
Mm.
to set a boundary to say, you know what, now's not the right time for us to be talking about this. I need some space. So many ways in which I've learned to tend to my needs, name my needs, but also in doing so have learned to honor the needs of others and understand how to meet people where they are at.
Right.
Does that make sense? So
That makes perfect sense.
yeah.
That makes perfect sense. And you know, kind of ties back to something Erin and I always say as being our introduction to this work, being our own personal work, um,
Mm,
being the fact that we have delved so deeply into our own selves and have held um, and have had space held for us in ways that have allowed us to personally transform.
mhm,
And in that capacity, that has allowed us to become a little bit more tolerant to um, witnessing transformation happening in others,
mm,
or to witness shame happening in others and hold that, to witness fear happening in others and hold that. So I think for me, that capacity in terms of how I operate now and the work that I do and the spaces that I occupy has cultivated a level of empathy for others because I have learned how to first and foremost extend it to myself.
mhm.
Um,
That's so beautiful
I mean,
and
which is
important.
hard.
Yeah, it's not easy.
I was
It's
gonna
beautiful,
say
but it's not easy. It's
that's
important, but it's not easy.
oh yeah.
And you know, as I listen to you, what's coming up is also for me to answer your question from my perspective also is that not everyone, so there, you know, we were talking a few weeks ago about the different roles that people play in social change.
Right.
Not everyone is going to be out there taking action, doing things in their bodies. Some people are, well, I guess everything happens through your body. So they may be writing emails, reading books, having conversations, but they might not be out in the world, taking up space, you know, confronting, having challenging conversations. I think there's different layers to what our capacities are. And I think this is one of the things about embodiment work that helps people get clear on what role is for them, is like what feels like they can handle it at this time, and what feels like it brings them most into their body, into aliveness, into their call to action.
Right.
Action can look like different things for so many people.
So long as it's action.
Yeah.
Right.
So long as it takes a form of activity. Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. So how do we draw the line between like, okay, this doesn't feel good and therefore I'm not going to do it, and this is my comfort zone essentially? Because one thing that we spoke about with Dr. Nicole Charles, who I was with last week, was essentially that readiness is never going to be a thing. If you wait until you're ready, until you feel that you're ready, you know, most of us wouldn't even get going. There has to be a willingness. So I guess I'm wondering, like, okay, if we rely on feeling, then what is it that leaps us into action? What is that thing that propels us forward? Does that even make sense? Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I hear that question loud and clear, and it's a big one. Because it comes down to, and I don't know how much of this is about embodiment, but I think it comes down to, you know, a personal will. You know, at some point someone's heart kicks in to a level where they can't justify not doing anything anymore.
Right.
And I think it has to do with time. Some people need a little bit more time to trust themselves, to feel like they can do this, that they can handle it.
Right.
And the other piece for me that does relate to embodiment is relationship. Some people, we need each other to step into this sometimes, right? You need to know that if you're going to invest your time, your energy, and confront your fears or your shame or your discomfort, that you're going to be held somewhere by someone, by something greater than you. And I think that also adds to people trusting themselves. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to for me, is like self-trust, trusting that I've got this, that I can handle this, and that even if I don't know all the answers, even if I don't feel ready, that I'm going to keep showing up with curiosity and openness and a sense of willingness. But yeah.
Yeah. I also think that's why, to your point around like feeling like you are held, or that essentially that perfection is not an expectation. I think that's why they say that the feeling of shame can never be one that propels someone into action. And I think in the social justice space, we often rely on shame. And we often use shame as a tool for calling out. But that emotion in the body is very constricting.
It shuts people down. It can shut people down big time.
Yeah. Big conversation. Did you want to add to that?
No, I was just, I'm not a big fan of shame. even when, you know, I've been out marching in the streets recently and I hear like some of the shame calls, I don't call those ones out. I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's, I understand where it's coming from. I understand
Right.
why it's been used, but I question the impact of that word, and I've been sitting with what else could we call out? What else other than shame could be the call out?
Right.
Like join us, or like interrupt, or I
Right.
don't know what's another word. Um, yeah, it's something I've
Yeah.
been dealing with recently. So I'm glad you named that. Have you have any thoughts on what else could be other than shame, like as a call out or as like a call in?
Well, I think as you were thinking about that, I was actually thinking, as you were naming that, I was thinking about how I constantly think about how folks are going, like the impact that language or
Mhm.
branding, essentially, like what emotion you want to make people feel
Mhm.
when they engage with something, which is essentially
Mhm.
marketing 101. You know, it's like, okay, if we
Mhm.
want you to buy a product, we want you to think that our product will help you in some form of way. It's going to
Mhm.
position it in some form of way. And so I think that social movements um, could benefit from that same lens of, okay, how do we want people to feel? How can we make this call welcoming?
Mm.
How could we make this call more so about the people versus the systems than the people versus the people?
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. Like,
I
how do
mean,
you feel like how do we hold people accountable for horrific things that they have done or are doing or upholding without shaming them? You know, it's like,
it's a big question because I know a lot of people would potentially disagree, right?
yeah,
Um,
because it should be
it's shameful,
yeah, it is shameful.
right?
It should be looked down
It
upon, but
should
how do
be
we
shamed,
not focus on the shame part and say what is happening is shameful? How do we get you past
right?
yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
I don't have the answers to that
No,
question.
I don't have the answer either, honestly. I think like all things, it's probably a balance. Every time I don't have the answer, I tell myself it's always a yes and,
Mm,
you know?
yeah, I like that.
Um, what's been a specific embodiment practice for you or a technique that you found to be particularly helpful, either in these times right now or when you were kind of new to, I don't know if you were ever new to this space because, you're you're part of a marginalized group, but how would you how would you have dealt, or how are you dealing?
How am I dealing? I am dealing all right. I just want to shout out, I think it was Erin who changed the banner. Did you change it while I was not looking? Good job. Or whoever did that. Thanks
Wow,
for me.
she's awesome. She literally came
Um,
behind the scenes. Thank you there.
oh, what are the embodiment practices that serve me in feeling tended to? That is not what you said, but that's what I
What,
heard.
just like in general, what are some techniques or embodiment practices that you resort to?
Yeah, restorative yoga has, from the moment that I started practicing restorative yoga, it has been such a beacon of wonder and awe and love from the
Mm,
inside out, like the warmest practice of care that I know. Um, so that is definitely something I fall on time and time again. It's a very supportive practice that centers physical comfort, not necessarily emotional comfort, but physical comfort, um, that allows your body to sort of release layers and layers of tension over time. It is
mm.
also time based, meaning that time is drawn out within this practice. Um,
Is it like a yin?
no, it's way more supported than a yin practice. So yin, it's similar in that postures are held for a long time, but
Right.
you're using a lot of props to hold
Okay.
the weight of your body so that you're not even so you're not relying on, you know, the force of gravity to do the work. You're using different props, different structures. You're strapping yourself in, you're binding parts of your body so that they feel to be held. And it has an effect on your nervous system that really allows you to let go of the physical layer and tap into the deeper layers of tension, wisdom, information in the body that can be unearthed or liberated through presence, listening, feeling, somatic awareness.
Right.
I also am a huge fan of breath work, restorative styles of breath work, which are much more slow than other forms of breath work. Just like somatic touch, like self-touch, self-massage, and voice work. I take a lot of baths, and like if you were in my house when I take baths, you hear the weirdest things coming out of the bathroom because I like blow bubbles and I hum and I'm like vocalize a lot in the resonant container of the bathtub because it like amplifies the sound and the vibration that I'm making, so it has a different effect on your body as well. There's so much that I do. But I think in terms of accessibility and ease, I think there's like a lot of like simple self-touch that you can do to help sort of soothe the sense of overwhelm or discomfort that often comes with stepping into this work and into these spaces. Yeah. What do
So
you
you
think?
said, I'll get to that. You said restorative yoga. You said breath work, voice work.
Even just like singing in your car to a song that like hits you in the heart space. It's like let it out, feel it. I know you like to sing.
I do like to sing. My poor partner every morning is like, oh, please, I'm trying to sleep. I think for me, what's worked, I'm very active. So I do stay active physically. I think in the moment though, like in the heat of heated conversations, in the heat of triggering social media content or conversations, the practice that works best for me is always observing the feeling. I've gotten pretty good at like being like, oh, I feel it in my chest. And just like pausing and really deeply feeling into it. And by feeling into whatever feeling it is, eventually after 2-3 minutes, it kind of dissipates. I don't know if you're familiar with that experience, but that feeling essentially like subsides. So helpful for me and tied to my earlier point on my flume of awe this week. It's like when I give myself, I need space and I just need like pregnant pauses in my life in general and in my conversations and my interactions. And so weaving those in and recognizing when I need to take a step back and really observe what's happening in my body has been helpful. And has been a tool that Erin and I have embedded with your support throughout the seed, and just in terms of like taking pauses to observe what's coming up, because this work is somatic. You know, yesterday I was listening to this amazing podcast, and in it, the speaker was talking about even when you talk about sameness versus differences, you feel a small shift in our bodies. So if the conversation about sameness, we feel a little bit more drawn in, feel a little bit more relaxed. The minute we shift into differences, we can feel that shift in our body. We can feel our heart rate going up a little bit, our pulse maybe going up. We can feel a little bit of discomfort in the body. And so taking time to acknowledge that and to honor that and witness that and give whatever that is space to move through we found have been helpful for us.
100%. Thank you for naming that. I feel like slowing down is the key.
Right.
And it doesn't mean like your physical practice has to be slow, right? Like I go to intense workouts, but after exercises, when there is, recovery period built in, there's a reason why in every workout, every intelligently designed workout, there's a recovery period put, because it's in those moments that our nervous system reorients, recalibrates, and gets on board to receive the benefit of the work that we're doing.
Right.
It's in those moments that there's not a reckoning, a realignment happening. Okay, how do I feel now? Should I keep going? Should I not keep going?
Right.
How is it serving me? What's coming up in this moment? And there's so many subtle differences that could change things for everyone based on how we're conditioned and what our nervous systems respond to, right? We're walking around in these amazing flesh suits, like these beautiful bodies that are so intelligent.
I love that.
They're like so intelligent, and they're so hyperlinked and connected on the inside in ways that we're still learning about, in ways that we're still discovering, that are amazing. And coursing through our bodies at any given moment is so much information, energetically, physically, emotionally, and not to mention the other layers of like what's happening with your respiratory system, what's happening with your circulatory system, your endocrine system. There's so much going on at all times within us. And the world that we now live in is so fast paced. We're digesting so much information, holding way more relationships than we've ever held because our devices connect so many more people. And so the capacities with which we're being asked to exist on are magnified beyond what our species was actually designed for. And we haven't caught up to match that capacity, if that makes sense. So it's absolutely normal that people get overwhelmed, that people are irritable, that people don't have the design in their minds yet, perhaps, to take those pauses. So claiming that space to be like, wait a minute, who am I? What am I feeling right now? What do I need to show up to the moment so I can serve it in the best way I know how, in the best way I can right now? Whether that's a conversation with someone else, whether it's a challenging conversation you have to step into, whether it's, sending an email or whatever it might be, learning how to take those pauses, right?
And to honor your body's needs in any given moment.
Yeah. And as we're transforming, as we're learning, as we're growing, every species has a practice of integration, of pause, of, a seed gets planted and it doesn't grow right away. It takes time to absorb the water, to start to spread out. It pauses, it grows incrementally. It's not instant. Nothing is instant in nature. And that's the thing about embodiment for me that I was hoping to share in this conversation as well was, our bodies are our most direct line to nature that we have. Right? We have always been a part of nature. We will always be a part of nature. We come from it, we return to it. Through us, life exists.
Right.
Through us, we create life, we share life, we show up to it.
Right.
As I was saying earlier. And so how do we learn to, in the same way that if we're caretaking for the land that we live on, or the plants that are in our home, how do we offer that same checking in with ourselves? So whatever practice it may be, everyone's going to respond to a different practice, right? But like, how do we tend to ourselves and our bodies?
So there's two things that you said that I think are like critical. One, slowness. And just like essentially going counter everything and counter the pace that this world is set to, in order to be able to really deeply feel and honor what our body needs at any given moment. And then the last point you made, which is an important one, and obviously the point of the seed, is that returning to nature and remembering that our bodies function and thrive and heal under the same circumstances and kind of seasonal settings as nature does. And being able to recognize those cycles in our lives. So, okay, this now it's time to plant the seed. Now it's time to kind of patiently wait. Now it's time to reap the fruits. Now it's
Mm-hmm.
time to till the soil. Now it's time maybe to do a little bit of pruning and remove things that don't serve me anymore. So all
Mm-hmm.
of the metaphors that tie back to taking care of the land also tie back to how we care for ourselves and each other and develop these interpersonal ecosystems with one another.
Mm-hmm. Amen. It's so true.
Mm,
And
thank you.
it's a living, breathing thing, right? Like the needs are going to shift and change, and what worked last week might not work this week.
Right.
Um, and we have to be able to have practices that allow us to respond rather than react.
Right.
Um,
And adapt as nature would.
exactly, which require pause and reflection every single time.
Mm-hmm. It is 9:44.
Déjà.
Déjà, ça passe vite, je te dis. I want to close on one important note, which, we speak to a little bit, but I want to explicitly name how we balance the urgency of social transformation with that need for slowness and patience
Mhm.
and presence cultivated through embodiment work. So it's like we don't really have the time anymore, especially as it pertains to the climate crisis. And
Mhm.
we need to slow down. How do we
Mhm.
hold those tensions?
I think one cannot exist without the other.
Mm,
I think when we look at the sort of physiological definition of resilience, it's the ability for someone or a nervous system to respond to a stressful situation and get back to a state of rest. And it's the
mm,
time or the distance, it's the time or distance between those 2 points. So we are more resilient when we can engage with a stressful situation and get back to a state of
mm.
centeredness. That is the measure of resilience, from a physiological definition. And so it's a relationship between stress or urgency or action, because stress, when we're talking about the nervous system, isn't necessarily negative. Sometimes, a
Right,
positive thing could be a stress on your system. So it's the action that is required, and then what practices do we have that help us come back to a state of centeredness and openness and feeling resourced,
mm,
so that we can again go out 2 days later and do the thing again. um,
right.
and and are we holding both equally?
Tensions.
Are we aware of that tension? And I think that's the work of embodiment, is knowing how to, as you were mentioning earlier, recognize the signals when, okay, this is getting to be a lot for me. I need to plan to do something to counter and create balance, because our nervous
Mm,
system really they're looking for homeostasis. We're designed to find balance. That's what our bodies actually want. And that's that feeling of like, oh, when you do take those pauses and you feel through and find that exhale moment, you're
right,
like, okay, I'm feeling good now. Um, so it's about integrating pauses, as you were
right,
saying, um, but on a zoomed out scale, if that makes sense. And then I
right.
think the other thing that comes up for me, um, that is for me very much felt in my body, is more on the spiritual level, is trusting that we have the capacity to call in on support from energies beyond our physical capacity. So ancestors, I think of angels, I think of spirits, guides that help us. And when I think of it in that way, I like to make the connection to the 7 generations teaching of like the work that we do, that we're doing now, we might not yet see the effect of. And somehow for me, that shifts the sense of urgency to a sense of like long vision, you know, like long vision work, like,
marathon.
yeah, spirit vision work, like zoomed out, zoomed way back. What can I do right now that I can connect with, that I can control, that I can be in right relationship to, that doesn't knock me out, so that I can keep showing up for it in a slow and steady way that is connected to my vision of the future, but not that I feel like I can only do on my own, that I have to get done right now, that I have to see through the completion of. As we know, systemic change is unfortunately not something that can happen overnight. There can be pivotal moments where significant things shift.
Yeah.
But the real transformation takes time.
So many good things you just said. Hold on. My mind works in like recaps. First and foremost, I was going to say that I just had this conversation with a friend who is, I think like many of us, feeling exasperated by the current state of the world, feeling hopeless. And, she's someone who's actively been in this work and leading this work, and is Middle Eastern herself, and therefore, kind of really, really at the grunt of it. And myself and another friend of ours who were together with her the other night were reminding her that, I think for me, as a Black person, as a Black woman, knowing that I am only now reaping the benefits of, civil rights work, knowing that, my son will probably inherit even more access and will have even less barriers than I did, than my parents did, than my great-grandparents did, definitely serves me in remembering that this is the long game. We're fighting for the long game here. So that for me really, really spoke to me, and I just reminded her of that. So thank you for naming just how short-sighted some of us are in the midst of this work, and how our expectations oftentimes fall short of what they could and should be in terms of reaping the fruits. And then what I heard from you in terms of balancing the sense of urgency with the need for slowness is this practice of action and integration. So you act and then you integrate. You do and then you pause. You extend and then you rest. And then the second thing I heard from you is tapping into spiritual, should that be, your realm, but it's also been helpful for me to know that there's bigger and better out there supporting me, and that I am not alone in this work.
That's so big. I mean, for me, that's, in times of crisis, or in times of losing hope, in times of feeling powerless and helpless, it is the anchor or the lightning bolt that like gets me back in. And it's really hard to find sometimes. And, everyone has their own relationship to spirituality and how it shows up in their life. But thanks for naming that as well.
Thank you for naming that. Is there anything you want to close on? A closing thought, a closing fertilizer reference that you would want people to know and be mindful of?
I mean, I think we've said it all through the conversation. I do really want to sort of amplify the message of carving out intentional moments of slow, of it doesn't have to be stillness if that doesn't work for your body, but slowness that allows you, and how I know that can be so uncomfortable for people, but finding ways that you can stay in it, whether it's, you know, lighting a candle and just looking at it for a few breaths, or putting on a certain type of music that helps you move your body in a way that feels really rewind vibes, like I think that's
Rewind vibes.
rewind vibes. But yeah, and to be really generous with the space you give yourself, because it's so important. And it's so easy to overlook that when there are other things that feel like they're more important. But you know, you are the center of your lived experience. And if the center of your lived experience is intended to, things can spin out of balance very easily. And the other thing I wanted to name was that, you know, any work that we do, whether you're a designer or a scientist or a musician or a writer, you know, you do a period of work and then you step out and you assess, how is this going? Is this moving in the right direction?
Right.
Do I need to tweak anything? And so to think of that as you're stepping into this work. And the last thing maybe I want to say is that our nervous systems respond to each other's. The magnetic field of our heart has been measured by scientists 9 feet in diameter from one human being. So the rooms that we walk into, the rooms that we share, the people that we hold relationship with as we move through the season of gathering, see
Have an
if you
impact on us.
yeah, they have impact on us and we have impact on them. So even if you're not saying anything to people, or as you're traveling to see your family and you're in the airplane or on the bus or in traffic, you know, I like to think about, like, what am I broadcasting right now where I am? And if I can just do that in my circle around me, I know I can have an impact. Even if that's all I did today was like hold loving awareness and care for myself and those in my 9 feet diameter.
Right.
I did enough today, maybe. So yeah, just that as well. Small wins.
Small wins. Small wins, big outcomes. Small wins, long game.
Yeah. Anything coming up for you that you want to share? I love hearing from you as well.
I appreciate that because I tend to be the space holder. But I mean, everything you just said, I think, reminded me of the importance of leaning into community and really thinking about how you impact the direct people around you before you can impact systemic change, which often seems to be the hardest thing to do in the midst of everything, because you want to drive, or you want to feel like the change that you have is, you know, impactful beyond your household. But I often feel, not often feel, I'm often reminded, and I think of this and I mention this oftentimes because my father would always say that success starts at home. So if I could be out there having the best grades in the world and being, you know, the most popular kid, but if I come home and my room's a mess, whatever's happening outside is irrelevant. And I often think of that now, and that I really try to practice, and it's a work in progress, but emotional congruence, and value congruence, making sure that I do what I say what I do. I am the change that I want to see in the world with my partner, with my child, with my friends and my community.
Mm,
And by focusing on them, trusting that they will then go out and germinate the seeds that I plant in their lives.
mhm. I love that so much. Home. Say it again, the home part.
Success starts at home.
Success starts at home.
Yeah.
One of my teachers I had an aha moment years ago where one of my teachers was like, your body is the only home that you take everywhere you go.
Mm,
And so if we could think of our bodies as an extension of our home or as the root of our home,
mm,
what does it look like to be in right relationship with our bodies?
mm,
And as people are, perhaps stepping away from this conversation, curious around, where do I start? What should I start restorative yoga? Should I do this? Blah, blah, blah.
right.
Like, everyone will need different things. Trust what your body tells you. You
Mm,
will know when when something feels right.
right.
You know when something feels landed. So trust that. Lean
And the
into
more
that.
you practice being in your body, because I know that for some folks, the body's not a comfortable place to be in.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you practice being in it, the more easy it becomes to recognize and to trust whatever guidance comes up.
There's so much wisdom there, and there are so many layers of processing there. It's very rich, and find the right therapists, space holders, community, as you were mentioning, to be with in the process if that's part of your need set.
Mm.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being such an amazing friend, for being such an amazing collaborator, for being an amazing guest. You definitely are one of those people in my life that has and continue to plant seeds, and that
Mm.
every time I connect with, I do feel your bandwidth extend over to me. So thank you.
Thank
Not me
you
getting
so much. I feel the same way. I love you. I'm so grateful for your friendship and your collaboration and for your conversation always.
always.
Thank
Have a
you.
beautiful day.
You too, love.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.